really don't. Here from my standpoint, not knowing enough about it, not having lived it, because I've never been in the NFL, probably that's a model that's tried and true. Could it be improved on? Absolutely. But, I don't want to recreate the wheel and come up with something that is novel, because that's going to take some time. So I would be very comfortable with what the NFL does.
Do you know what your colleagues for this game?
I don't.
Never came up before.
Do you think it'd be realistic something could happen this year, or is that just something to table and kind of think about?
Larry and I talked about it. We'll discuss it at our next AD's meeting,
Which is October.
Early October.
Do you have any thoughts on how it could be enforced?
Like anything else, you tell me. How do you enforce traffic tickets? It's always the tough question.
Have you talked to any other ADs about the situation, about the injuries, or has it just been kind of an individual school kind of thing?
I've talked to one other athletic director about it, and he thought it had some pros and cons.
The ACC apparently does it. Do you know anybody in that league and have gotten a sense of how it works there?
I don't, Bob. I really don't. The only one I'm familiar with, as a fan, is the NFL's, and I've read about it. And ironically, it wasn't about competitive advantage; it was about gambling, and that's where the genesis of the NFL's was. But now it's become, a competitive advantage tool as well.
We're kind of surprised. It seems like you guys ended up being the tipping point for all of this.
I don't know about that. I think USC had some issues as well, but I think it's natural for the Pac-12 to have leadership in innovative issues, because we're the most open conference to the media. There's no question about that our teams, with few exceptions, and you guys probably know them better than me, I think there's 3 or 4 institutions that do not let media go to practice. But for the most part, we're pretty darn open, and I think when you get that, you worry about things that are unintended, like a competitive disadvantage.
When Tyrone was here, obviously he closed and didn't have much access. When Steve came, he made a big point about saying open and bringing everybody in. What's changed in the game that may have suggested that we can't continue?
I just think it's, I'm not a historian on this fact, and
but you've been here for the whole time, since Tyrone.
Well, 1 year of Tyrone,
yeah.
But going back to what it's evolved into, I can't tell you that. Steve's always been in a system that's always had open practices. He's very comfortable with that. I've been in both. I've talked to you guys extensively about how Coach Saban did it and what he did. And, I'll back my coach with what he wants to do, but my personal preference is to have open practices. I like that. I like access. I like doing that. But I am not going to do it at the expense of our football team. I'm not going to allow that to happen.
It seems like there's always been a worry if one conference does it but another doesn't, so does it put that conference at a competitive disadvantage?
That's a good question, and that's something we're going to have to talk about as ADs. Like Steve said, we'll probably do it for conference games only, start it, and then for non-conference, not have it.
Do you think the stakes having increased in terms of the, money, pressure, win, or get fired, that sort of thing?
I think it's more to do with you guys. You guys are so connected and so information driven and have so much access, and there's so many people, it's so many access points in it that there's no more secrets. In the 70s you could hide injuries, or the 80s you could hide injuries and no one would ever know them. You can't hide anything now.
Were you concerned that media was going to go start nosing around with parents, sibs, whatever, to try to get information?
I think it would backfire on you, frankly.
You mean
talking about injuries with parents of a player?
Backfire on media?
Yes. I think it's a dangerous area for you guys to talk about injuries with parents.
Yeah, well, it would be a dangerous area for schools too.
No question. But one thing that I can assure you, Art, is that we are paramount in the safety and welfare of our student athletes and in communication with our parents and how we do it.
And a report would kind of help end conjecture, right? Wouldn't it? You said you were able to say something?
I think so. It just gives you at least a base to start at and a level playing field to go for.
Scott, do you feel like this is more of just a perception issue than anything, instead of a real true disadvantage?
It probably could be, and I have to trust coaches on that standpoint and what they feel and how they feel about it. But and everything's subjective. I mean, I can't say that you could argue that Tyrone shut practices down, so he lost football games, so it's a bad model. Or I could say, Nick Saban shut practices down in the media, and that's a good model. I mean, you can't say one way or the other.
Well,
It works for us. It's the University of Washington. It's Seattle. I mean, we like to be open. That's who we are. That's what we want to be. But we're not going to do it at the expense of our team. And if our coaches feel like it puts us at a competitive disadvantage, we're going to have to get some rules of engagement and start talking about it. And I'll talk to you guys individually about it. And that's an important thing in what we do, because you guys don't want us to have a competitive disadvantage. That's not what you're about either. We're all in this together. And that's how I feel about it, and that's my view of the world.
Since it came down, do you feel like there is a happy medium that can be addressed?
Sure there is. There absolutely is. And I figure there's a way to figure this out.
You said that the Pac-12 was pretty open, and the school especially. Has there ever been any talk about closing practice at the University of Washington, or has that ever come up, or even as a thought?
Yeah, I mean, I lived it, as Art told you. I backed Tyrone for a year of it, when I was here as the interim, and it's one of the things I liked about Steve is having an open practice, and like I've told you guys, hey, I lived it with Nick at LSU. I know what it does.
Right.
And when you like to control everything and every access point and every facet of the game, and you're one of those guys, and you're successful at it, like Coach Saban is, it works.
if there's for some reason an inability to come up with a formula for reporting, would you advocate then that everybody close practices to media?
No, I think there's a way to work this out.
Do you get the sense that this is something that they want to maybe put a fast timetable on, or is this something they're going to really try to study and evaluate?
I'm sure Commissioner Scott will be careful in talking to all of my colleagues as well as me, and talk about what the right thing to do, and if there's support for it. I'm just one voice of 12, but it makes all the sense in the world to me.